What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin price chart as Bitcoin is now pressing on $28,000. And we're going to be talking about why the bears actually missed the bottom again. Typically in markets and pivotal moments, you will notice that the masses or the herd will typically end up getting it wrong. They will usually buy high, expecting higher, or they will sell low, expecting lower. And we're going to talk about a lot of the things going on in here to show that this was the bottom of the Bitcoin price chart, which at the time we expected that it was. But we're going to revisit some things to show that, again, just even in more details on how the bottom is in. But I think it's important to recognize how retail investors tend to get caught wrong-footed. They get caught off sides. The most common response I got to all of my tweets for months on end, especially in November and in December, is that we were going to be going down to $12,000 for Bitcoin, 12K. Retail sold out of there as capitulation happened in June. Most of the market, the big caps, they bottomed there in June. Bitcoin did one push down. We're actually going to show something really interesting about that, because if you've been following this channel for the last year or two, we've talked a lot about how the price action of Bitcoin right in here really mirrored that of deep within a bear already happening, and that in both of these past bears, 2014 and 2018, we were already acting like we were way into a bear already for Bitcoin. And we know that because this is the euphoria time. This is the laser eyes and diamond hands, and then we get deeper into it. But we'll show here how everything that happened here, including this final moment right in here, all mimicked the bottom of the market happening, and that the bears once again got left behind, and now they're kind of got themselves into a little bit of a pickle. Now, on December 21st of last year, 2022, December 21st, I asked the infamous question, what comes next? $40,000 for Bitcoin or $12,000 for Bitcoin? Of course, I picked that $12,000 number because it's the one that is being commented on everything. For some reason, I don't know why. Everybody's been programmed that we're going to $12,000. It's the number we're going for. What is the price of Bitcoin on December 21st? We're right here at 16,853, right on December 21st. There we are. What comes next? 40K or 12K? The masses say we're going to 12K. 18,500 votes. Of course, if you remember, on November 14th of 2021, the prior year, same question, what comes next? Bitcoin 100,000 or Bitcoin 20,000? The opposite, 64% say we're going to 100,000, whereas 35% say we're going to 20,000. That is on November 14th. And the price of Bitcoin on November 14th of 2021 was $65,000. So there we are. We have our two examples right in here. The masses believe we're going to 100K and the masses believe we're going to 12K. Those were things that were alarming to me. Typically, whenever you have 2/3 of people in the same belief, that's usually a warning sign. I was very convicted back there in December of last year after the FTX collapse that we were at the bottom, and I wanted to make sure that I got this poll out there real quick to have this documented for times like today to show the offsides that happened once again. But it's just like back here where they're all caught off sides, is that there was no rationale for the price to go to $100,000. It didn't matter what kind of points I tried to prove to say we weren't going to go there. It just wasn't going to. And then there was no rationale for it to go down to $12,000. And I'm going to show that right now. And we're going to talk about the things we talked about over the course of the last year. And it all ties back to what was happening with the price action starting at this moment. This right here was the price behavior of what occurs deep into the depths of an actual bear. And that what happened in here for this price action was the full completion of this thing. We had already gone all the way down at this point. If you wanted any more, you were looking for the deepest bear ever. And people will probably say, well, that's not true because in 2014 and in 2018, the price of Bitcoin fell 84%, right? But the problem is this whole thing. There was some wonky action that happened in here, and we've had to present that case over and over again that this was very odd behavior that happened in here for Bitcoin, and the focus really needed to be more on this action that was happening in here, that we were deep into the depths of a bear already, and that we are now we're like over 2 years into this thing, right? Or just about, right? The top comes in here when Coinbase IPOs back in April, and then we start bearish behavior. And you see that in all the underlying indicators. You see that there on the weekly time frame, and you see that over there on the monthly time frame, especially how the market really falls off at this point, and that this is where the bear actually starts back here in April of 2021. Look over here back to 2017 and 2018. Peak comes in there in December, right? Then we fall off of a cliff happening in here. And so we've already fallen off the cliff in here. And this price action, this new little high that sets here for Bitcoin, is inconsistent with it being still a bull market. But there's still a lot of people out there that still want to grasp onto the idea that we are going to set new lows, that the 12K is going to come. Hey, I definitely think it's possible after a retrace happens in here, then we can turn ourselves over. But I do think the retrace is going to come first. Whether or not there's waffling around in here before the retrace ends up coming in, before it can roll over and head to those new lows, that's fine with me. But the idea of it going to 12K and that actually being a bottom, I just don't see it. I don't know who saw it. I don't know what arguments there were for it. I asked for it a million times from the people who were saying we're going to 12K. I said, show me why. Not a single person could tell me why. It just means they were regurgitating something someone else was telling them. And so what I want to show here is the things that we talked about all year long on even when the top was happening in here, and how we were behaving as if we were already in the depths of a bear for Bitcoin, and why the distance that we ended up going actually was good enough. So first thing is dating back to when all this price action began and how it was the same price behavior in here, right? That this was the same play out that was happening in here, and that even in both these moments, right back here in 2018, during this moment right in here, this is going back to hit the 200-day moving average right in here. And I'll show that again here in a second, but that's also exactly what we did here in 2022, that this revisit right here is back to the 200-day moving average. I'll just show that again really fast so we can move on from it. But you can see, here we go. We hit the 200-day moving average. Right in here, we hit the 200-day moving average, but our price behavior leading to that moment, these were the same exact price behaviors happening here from the depth of a bear to go back to hit that 200-day moving average and then eventually capitulate. But what we had noticed in capitulation happening in here for Bitcoin is that it had gotten down deep, right? We had hit a huge capitulation moment. It got down pretty deep, but still it didn't quite go the full depths. Then eventually it finally ended up reaching it down here, going down the same depths of what we've seen happen in these endings happening before here. So it was kind of a wonky ending that came with a crazy narrative of like FTX, right? But this isn't the only thing, right? So we've also referenced back to what was happening in 2014 for Bitcoin, is that, if we're going to be referencing to say, hey, we're this deep in here, in that, the bear has already been in place for quite some time. We're already a full year practically into the bear market at this point right here for Bitcoin. And we can corroborate that by looking at a lot of the altcoins. When you look at like XRP, you look at Litecoin, that they were deep within bears already, that we should show consistencies for Bitcoin that would be happening right in here as well, right? That we'd already be like quite a ways into this thing at this point. And we've definitely referenced this over and over again to show how the price behavior was very similar, and that, we were in Wyckoff accumulation for a long time, right? Then as we get right here, FTX collapse happens, but let's play with this too. So we'll grab this one. And you guys know we've done this many times, right? So we were moving pretty much at the exact same time velocity as well. And then eventually it works its way to the bottom. What happens in 2014? There's an ABC that comes in here till finally it heads over and capitulates, right? Same thing's happening in here in 2022. We get an ABC that happens in here, works its way, and then goes into capitulation, right? And we know that. We've looked at this many times happening in here. And then it started working into Wyckoff accumulation, right? And so like we can line these things up too. We can sit here and say, hey, this was it. This is the depths at which we were going at right in here. Price behavior, all the same. Look at the pauses, look at everything. ABC is coming in here, then finally going into capitulation. Everything looks good. We've got it lined up just right. Let's get it just perfect in here to show this. And all of you guys do know this. We've looked at this many, many times. But the thing is, right, like, did we really go the same depths? And the thing was, no, we hadn't yet, right? But then we get the FTX collapse. And what happens with the FTX collapse? It gives it to us. It gives us the exact distance that we were looking for what happens in these endings. And so what you have happen in here is we have the ending of a bear, as we've seen in 2018 and as we've seen in 2014. They both emerged here, and their distances were identical. People who wanted more than we've ever seen before. People who wanted more at the top wanted price to behave differently than it has ever behaved before. And now at this point, we could take all this stuff off here. We could switch over to the monthly time frame. We could see the price has completely behaved, or the indicator behavior has completely behaved as the bottom is in. We're already working our way out of here. And so anybody who's looking for lower, they're just, I think they're kind of just stuck. I wouldn't want to be in that position. I would not want to have sold, waited 9 months, and then now suddenly it's at $28,000 and I need it to go lower, because you have the price behavior, you have the technical behavior, you have all the things that have happened in here to indicate the bottom is already in and the price is already working its way out. Look to the past on how it's behaved. It's out. We can still go back to 2014, talk about the things we've talked about over the course of the last year. We see the depths, we see where we're at. We spent enough time down here. Capitulation was back in June. We're working our way out. And I just want to talk about like the challenges that have happened here is that there are still going to be people who are bearish and worried, and they can't change their opinion here. And I understand why they can't change their opinion here, because price has gotten too far away. At this point, price has gotten so high now. We've talked all about this back then. We said, hey, look, once this thing gets too carried away, they are not going to be able to change their mind the whole way up, because you have this major resistance right here. Even so, like, even if, let's say, price gets through right here, what are they going to do next? Well, the next problem is then there's a ton of resistance that sits right there. And if it actually does get into this level, what are you going to do next? Then you have to sit there and say, well, now we're heading back into all of these retracement levels, and now there's just big danger. Are we going to get rejected at 50%? Are we going to get rejected at 618 or at 702? There's a lot of danger in here. And even right now, today, you see where we are, right? We're at the first retracement level, the 236. But I really wanted to show all things indicate bottom was in, man. So if any type of rejections come out of here, for me, it is full-fledged buy the dip. It doesn't matter what the narrative is. Why does it not matter what the narrative is? How many people told you don't fight the Fed down here in June when they did their first 75 basis point rate hike? 75, 75, 75, 75, 50, 25. All these rate hikes, don't fight the Fed. The people who fought the Fed beat the Fed. All the people who are so smart and understand the Federal Reserve, they're the ones who got left behind. I think one of the bigger concerns too is that there's two camps, right? You have this camp that is now that all of their kind of stuff has been disproven, their whole fight the Fed stuff has been disproven. They don't know what to do. They're kind of grasping onto it, and we'll go into that later this week, the whole $1 million per Bitcoin within the next 90 days because of the narrative of what's going on out there in the world with the banks, with the Fed. The discount window opening up, $150 billion, the most in history, bigger than great financial crisis. There's going to be massive devaluation of the dollar. Hyperinflation's coming. We're going to $1 million within 90 days, right? You get a little bit of upward price action, and then we're going to $1 million in 90 days, right? But then there's the same camp of people. So that's the justification on, hey, why I can buy this because of the narrative, right? And then there's the same people who are just like, I've been left behind. I've been burned way too many times. If I buy when the price is up, the price is going to fall. We're going to go to that 12K. I just know it. But we've spent many months talking about the bottom already being. We know Ethereum's bottom's been in since June. XRP's bottom's been in since June. Most of the major caps, their bottoms have been in since June. It's just Bitcoin had to finally finish that little full extension it's had for this whole price behavior as we saw in 2014 and 2018. And the thing to be cautious about right now, for me in particular, is that I know a lot of people, they just try to continuously point to what happened the last time. And I think a lot of people are going to draw on this as being what is happening right here. And I'm coming to tell you right now, as someone who saw this and as someone who saw this in the thick of the moment, that I do not believe we are doing this. It is going to be something different. What was happening in here was late phase of a super cycle, and it was the second time we had it because that's the exact same thing that happened in here. You had crash, retrace, reaccumulation for the final extension. That's exactly what we had happening in here. Crash, retrace, reaccumulation, final extension in the super cycle. Just as you can even see in here from the last super cycle, this was the phase of the crash, retrace, reaccumulation. There's not going to be another crash, retrace, reaccumulation, and then another 4.236 extension from right here. There's only two different circumstances that can emerge from right in here, in my opinion and my speculation, is that one, it's either starting another super cycle and you have your best case scenario is that it's actually something like this happening in here and it's just going to grind and go for something massive. Or this is the completion of the last super cycle for Bitcoin to have to come back and revisit these lows way down here. And that any type of retracement that comes in here is actually going to eventually reject and head all the way down here. And I've presented that many times. And I have to say, and I'm going to put like absolute serious confidence on it, we are not doing this. This is not happening right here. It is completely out of place for that to end up happening. In 2019 and in 2020, we expected this. We crash, retrace, reaccumulation, go. We know that's what happens at the end of super cycles, like with Ethereum's. Right there, you've got it. You've got crash, retrace, reaccumulation, 4.236 extension, and that's it, lights out. We have a very much of a recency bias in crypto and in market analysis to say what happened the last time. And I just know it because I've seen it over there on Twitter, how many people are saying, we're doing this again. And it's the same people who got wrong-footed here. It's the same people who got wrong-footed here who are now saying, we're doing this. We're not. Either Bitcoin is starting a whole new super cycle all over again, and these calls for $1 million are true, and we're just going to grind all the way up there. Or this is the completion of the fifth wave, and we've now had 3 super cycles happening in here. We've now completed the fifth wave, and we are heading back to retracements and then heading deep down below the 2018 lows. And we can either believe in the magic of super cycles with Bitcoin and we're about to start some craziness going to $1 million, or we have to also look at what is going on in markets in general and what is going on with the United States stock market. Because each of Bitcoin's major runs that have happened, whether it's 2013, whether it's 2016 and 2017, or if it's 2020 and 2021, they were all marked by the stock market breaking out. And every all-time high that happened for Bitcoin after a multi-year bearish period occurred within weeks of the stock market breaking out, in particular the Dow Jones. So if the Dow Jones is not heading to new all-time highs, there's a very real case for this being the circumstance happening in here. And so this is going to be a very, very unique time, and people are going to have to do better than grabbing onto magic ideas. And one of the things we've talked about a lot with Bitcoin and expecting a bounce to come out of here, and why we've talked about retrace for so long, is the crash, retrace, reaccumulation breakout for 4.236 extension and what happens right in here, because we've compared this to Ethereum. This is exactly what we got. That we caught a huge bounce over here below the previous all-time high, as we have caught over here for Bitcoin below the previous all-time high. And that there's a very real possibility of a retracement coming out in here, getting back into these levels, and then turning over and heading all the way down, because the stock market is not going to give us a new all-time high, and we're heading into a deflationary time period in markets. So we'll talk about all those things throughout the week, but I wanted to show how narratives, herd behavior, it always is wrong. And we have to be real careful right now in this really intense moment that is coming, because there's a lot of narratives. There are banking crisis narratives. There's going to be Federal Reserve narratives. There is the $1 million within 90 days narrative. And these narratives are going to be loud. And so we'll take it day by day. We'll cover all this stuff as it goes, but it's important to look back on it and say, you know, why did retail get it wrong? And it's because they didn't look at the chart. They expected something different. Just like it's $65,000, expecting $100,000. They were expecting something different. Just like at $16,000, they were expecting $12,000. They were expecting something different. And so this is going to be an intense time in markets as we move forward, because what we're going to see is a lot of people flip-flop. You're going to have a lot of people who got wrong-footed at the bottoms who are going to have to stick to their guns and scream that we're still going to $12,000, because how could you not? If you sold at $16,000 expecting 12, and now we're at 28, That's a very difficult position to be in with the resistances that we have up above. But then at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people justifying it, buying into the retracements because this time is different. This is not just a return to normal retrace. We're doing $1 million within 90 days. So we'll cover all that stuff. But I really wanted to show how the charts told us the bottom was in. The charts told us the top was in for Bitcoin back in 2021. But still, the general consensus is typically the opposite of what is going to end up happening, especially at the actual reversal time period. So buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. There's way too much for me to dive into for today being a Sunday, but I wanted to show how nothing corroborated a $12,000 bottom, but the things that we talked about all throughout 2022, we actually ended up getting it. So the bottom did end up getting marked by those things that we were looking at, the late stage bear fractals from 2014 and 2018. And the top did end up getting marked by a 4.236 extension and a super cycle. Now comes the big challenge of heading back into the retracement and how things are going to go from there. That's going to be our big battle moving forward, and we'll go through it together. There you go, guys. The charts win again. They found the bottom. But all right, I hope that you're having a wonderful weekend, guys. It's going to be a busy week this week. It's going to be a crazy week this week. We'll see what happens with the banks when the markets open up tomorrow. They actually open up later tonight. We know that gold is pushing up on new all-time highs. It's trying to go for it as it closed last week above all Fibonacci retracement levels, only 22 cents short of the last highest weekly close that we had in 2022. Otherwise, fighting over here against 2020 prices, but 22 cents below the highest close of 2022. We've got the Federal Reserve coming out with their rate decision on Wednesday with everything going on and it totally being blamed on rates. Wow, it's going to be interesting. One would have to expect it'll be a volatile week again. So buckle up and I'll catch you guys tomorrow in Markets in the Morning. But again, chalk it up to magical unicorn fairy dust, puppet masters pulling the puppet strings, God or a simulation. But it actually took the FTX collapse to hit Bitcoin's price target for the 2014 fractal and the 2018 fractal. And hopefully your mind is a little blown. But all right, guys, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.